All right, welcome in everybody to the deep dive. We've got a fascinating topic lined up for you today, one that really blurs the lines between, well, fiction and belief.
Definitely a book that's, well, infamous, really, the Necronomicon. It comes from the mind of H.P. Lovecraft, a writer known for some pretty unsettling visions.
Exactly, and a lot of you have probably heard of it, maybe in a movie, a book, maybe even a video game. It's this kind of legendary grimoire, the
Right.
go-to symbol for forbidden knowledge.
Right. But what's really got us intrigued, and what we want to explore with you today, is how this completely fictional creation, right, something Lovecraft made up,
Yeah.
has managed to spark all these real-world theories.
Theories that suggest it's way more than just, a figment of his imagination.
Yeah, like it actually exists somewhere, out there.
And that curiosity, that's exactly what we're going to be diving into today.
So what we really want to do with this deep dive is, well, get to the bottom of this whole thing.
Like, why do people believe in a real Necronomicon? What's the quote-unquote evidence?
And how does that stack up against, well, the arguments that say it's all just made up?
Right, and I think most importantly, we want to try to understand why this book, this fictional book, has resonated so powerfully for so long, almost as if it truly held genuine secrets.
Yeah, like it has this power to like really get under people's skin.
Exactly. So to do that, we're going to be drawing on some pretty compelling material that really digs deep into this whole mystery. And of course, us, we're going to keep things grounded in reality, always remembering the power of storytelling, but also, the importance of separating fact from fiction.
So first things first, right? We got to lay out the core tenets of this Necronomicon conspiracy.
Yeah, what are the fundamental beliefs that drive this whole idea that the book isn't just a story?
So let's hear it. What are we talking about here?
Well, the main idea, and I think it's kind of obvious, is that the Necronomicon isn't entirely Lovecraft's invention. Believers often suggest that he was drawing on something real.
Like something that actually existed. Interesting.
Yeah, and there are a few different ideas about what that could be. Some folks think it might be rooted in actual, ancient texts, maybe fragments, stuff that survived or maybe even been lost over time.
So like pieces of a puzzle scattered throughout history.
Exactly. Then there's the idea that it could be linked to, really old oral traditions, whispers of forgotten lore, stories passed down over generations.
So like a hidden history passed down through whispers.
Yeah.
That's spooky.
Definitely. And then there's the really out there idea that maybe this knowledge was somehow, I don't know, channeled, like from somewhere beyond our normal perception.
Channeled. Okay, now we're getting into some seriously mysterious territory.
Right. But then there's this whole other layer, this figure of Abdul Asrez, the supposed author. He really adds to the mystique, like he makes it feel more real.
Yeah, it gives it a sense of ancient authenticity.
Exactly. So the story goes that Alhizred was this kind of shadowy Arab scholar, supposedly lived centuries ago. And he dedicated his life to, well, exploring all sorts of forbidden and esoteric knowledge.
So like the ultimate seeker of forbidden wisdom.
Right, and the theories really focus on his supposed encounters with, well, what they call otherworldly entities, like beings that are way older and more powerful than us.
Okay, hold on. Like Lovecraftian monsters.
Basically, yeah. Beings outside of our normal understanding. And this whole origin story is really key, I think, because it kind of imbues the Necronomicon with this sense of real supernatural power. Like, it's not just a book, but a conduit to something else.
And conduit, like a gateway or a key. That's pretty creepy, man.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not just historical curiosity that drives this belief. A lot of it revolves around what people think is actually in the book.
So like the actual contents of the Necronomicon, like what's written on the pages.
Right. The real draw for many believers is this idea that it contains actual spells, rituals, and these incredibly detailed descriptions of cosmic entities, the very beings that Lovecraft wrote about.
So they're not just seeing this as imaginative writing. They think it's a blueprint for, I don't know, conjuring up these terrifying creatures.
Exactly. It's not just a story. It's like a how-to manual.
Yeah.
And believers, they don't just think it's make-believe. They believe it's real. These forces, these beings, they're out there. And this book holds the key to, well, either gaining immense power or, unleashing unimaginable horrors.
So a dangerous book then.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it's not just some dusty old book full of secrets. It's often portrayed as like curse.
Whoa, okay.
Yeah, like bad things happen to people who read it or try to use it.
So it's not just about the knowledge itself, it's about the danger of even possessing that knowledge.
Right. The theories often link it to madness, like people going crazy, unexplained deaths, and, the possibility of actually summoning these ancient evils into our world.
Like a gateway to something truly terrifying.
Exactly. And the supposed fate of those who, delve too deep or try to use its rituals, that serves as a pretty serious warning.
Okay, so we've got this mysterious, potentially dangerous book. But where is it? Who has it?
Well, that's where the idea of a secret society or some powerful organization comes in. They're the ones guarding the real Necronomicon.
Ah, the classic secret society trope. It always makes things more intriguing.
Right. It explains why such a, supposedly powerful book isn't just lying around for anyone to find. It's being kept hidden.
For a reason. Right, okay. So that's the basic premise. But what about the so-called evidence? What do believers point to as proof that this book is more than just a figment of Lovecraft's imagination?
Well, there are a few key things that come up. One is this idea that there are references to the Necronomicon, or books that sound a lot like it, in historical accounts and folklore, even stuff that predates Lovecraft.
So like echoes of the book appearing in history before Lovecraft even wrote it.
Yeah, and the argument is that these aren't just coincidences, like they're hints, fragments of memory of the real book, suggesting it has a much longer history than we know.
Interesting. But what about Lovecraft himself? Didn't he create the Cthulhu mythos, this whole world of cosmic horror?
He did, and that's another point believers often bring up. The fact that the Cthulhu mythos has had such a huge impact on popular culture, it resonates with people across generations.
Yeah, it's everywhere. Books, movies, video games, even art and music.
Exactly, and for some, that longevity, that staying power, it's evidence that there's something more to it, like it's tapping into some kind of deeper reality or a collective unconscious awareness of something ancient and powerful.
Okay, so the mythos' popularity is seen as proof.
Interesting. But what about the stories themselves? They're pretty unsettling, right? Oh, definitely. Lovecraft's writing is known for its ability to, really creep people out. And that's another thing proponents of the theory point to. The fact that his writing is so effective at evoking this sense of cosmic dread, this feeling of insignificance in the face of vast, unknowable forces. Well, some believe that points to a deeper truth, like he wasn't just making things up, he was accessing something real, something terrifying that exists beyond our everyday experience.
So let's unpack these different pieces of evidence a bit more. How do believers interpret these points to support their idea of a real Necronomicon? Let's start with the references in ancient texts and folklore.
Okay, so with those references, the main argument is that they're not just random similarities, like different cultures separated by time and geography having similar ideas about, say, cosmic beings or forbidden knowledge. It's more than just coincidence, they say.
So they're suggesting a kind of shared ancient wisdom that Lovecraft tapped into.
Yeah, like he was drawing from a pre-existing foundation of knowledge, maybe without even realizing it himself. It's like they're saying, look, these ancient cultures were onto something, and Lovecraft's stories are proof.
Okay, I see. And what about the visceral impact of Lovecraft's writing? How does that play into this?
For believers, that's a big one. The way his words can make you feel this overwhelming sense of cosmic insignificance, this deep primal dread. It's so powerful that they feel it has to come from something real, like it reflects a genuine, even if terrifying aspect of the universe.
So the intensity of the emotional response is seen as evidence of some deeper truth.
Exactly. It's like if it feels this real, it must be real.
Okay, and then there's the popularity of the Cthulhu mythos. How does that fit into their arguments?
Well, the argument is that if it were purely fictional, if it had no basis in reality, it shouldn't have such a lasting impact on so many people. The fact that these stories, these creatures, continue to inspire new stories and art, even decades later, that's seen as a sign that it resonates with something deep within us, like it's tapping into some kind of archetypal understanding of the universe.
So they're saying it's too big, too powerful to be just a made-up story.
Right. And then there's this idea that the lack of a clear denial from certain experts or organizations is actually suspicious.
Suspicious? Like, who are we talking about here?
Scholars of the occult, secret societies, that kind of thing. The fact that they haven't come out and definitively said, nope, the Necronomicon doesn't exist. Well, some people interpret that silence as a kind of tacit acknowledgement that there might be something to it.
So the absence of a denial is seen as proof. Okay, that's a bit of a stretch, but I see the logic. And what about the realism of Lovecraft's writing?
Yeah, that's another big one. Lovecraft was really good at creating these intricate and believable worlds, even if they were full of bizarre and, unconventional elements.
Yeah, he was a master of creating atmosphere and suspense.
Exactly. And the level of detail he put into describing the Necronomicon, its history, its translations, what it supposedly contains, it all contributes to this feeling that it could actually exist. So for some, it's that level of detail, that realism, that leads them to believe it must be based on something real.
All right, so we've heard the believer side, but now let's flip the script. What about the skeptics? What are their main counter-arguments against the idea of a real Necronomicon?
Well, the most basic and probably the strongest argument is that the Necronomicon is just that, fiction, a product of Lovecraft's imagination.
He was a writer, after all. It was his job to create stories.
Exactly. It's a product of his creativity, his love of horror and mythology, and his fascination with the vastness of the cosmos.
But people are drawn to the mystery, right? The forbidden knowledge, the sense of danger. There's something inherently appealing about that.
Absolutely. And that's where the psychological factors come in. Throughout history, people have been fascinated by the idea of forbidden knowledge, of secrets that could grant power or reveal hidden truth. And that fascination can lead some people to, blur the lines between what's real and what's imagined.
And then there's Lovecraft's skill as a writer. He was really good at what he did.
Oh, definitely. He was a master of creating atmosphere and suspense, of drawing readers into his world and making them feel these intense emotions. And the impact of his stories, it comes from that ability to connect with readers on an emotional level, not from their factual accuracy. A good story can feel incredibly real, even if it's entirely made up.
And isn't there a complete lack of real-world evidence to support the existence of the Necronomicon?
Absolutely. Despite all the claims and theories, nobody has ever found an actual ancient text that matches the descriptions of the Necronomicon. No historical accounts that confirm its existence. No real-world rituals or spells that can be definitively linked to it.
It's also worth noting that Lovecraft himself and his circle of friends were very clear that the Necronomicon was fictional.
Yeah, that's a crucial point. Lovecraft himself said it was a literary device, something he created to add depth and history to his stories. There was never any suggestion that it was anything other than a product of his imagination.
So if it's so clearly a work of fiction, why do people still believe in its reality? What's keeping this myth alive?
Well, I think a big part of it is that fascination with forbidden knowledge. The idea of a book that holds secrets that could change everything, that could be dangerous, even deadly. It's incredibly compelling.
And Lovecraft's brand of horror, this cosmic horror, it plays into that, doesn't it?
Definitely. It taps into our primal fear of the unknown, of vast, powerful forces beyond our comprehension. The idea that there might be these ancient entities out there just waiting to be unleashed, that's a pretty terrifying thought. And the Necronomicon in Lovecraft's stories becomes a symbol of that fear.
And it's become more than just a book in a series of stories. It's become a kind of modern myth, hasn't it?
Yeah, a symbol of darkness, mystery, the ultimate forbidden knowledge. And that's what allows it to capture the imagination, even for people who haven't read Lovecraft stories.
And we can't forget about the role of popular culture in all this.
Right. The Necronomicon has popped up in so many books, movies, video games, you name it. And each appearance, even when it's clearly fictional, just reinforces the idea that it might be real. It keeps the myth alive.
And that can be dangerous, right? Blurring the lines between fiction and reality like that.
Absolutely. If people genuinely believe in the Necronomicon and its powers, it could lead them to do things that are harmful or, at the very least, misguided.
It could also make them vulnerable to manipulation.
Yeah, people claiming to have the book, or to know its secrets, could exploit others for their own gain.
And it contributes to a larger problem, this spread of misinformation.
Yes, exactly. If people are willing to believe in a fictional book of spells, it makes them more likely to believe other things that aren't true, and that can have real-world consequences.
Then it undermines critical thinking.
Yes. It's important to be able to distinguish between what's real and what's not, especially when it comes to something as potentially dangerous as a book of forbidden knowledge.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into the Necronomicon conspiracy, what are the key takeaways for our listeners?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway is that while the Necronomicon is a powerful and enduring piece of fiction, it is just that, fiction. It's a testament to the power of storytelling and to our own fascination with the unknown.
It's also a reminder that we need to be critical thinkers, to question what we hear and see, and to be able to separate fact from fiction.
Absolutely. So as you go about your day, maybe think about why certain fictional creations, like the Necronomicon, have such a lasting impact on us. What does that tell us about ourselves, about our fears and desires?
And why are we so drawn to the idea of forbidden knowledge?
It's something to ponder.
Definitely food for thought.
And on that note, thanks for joining us for another deep dive. We'll catch you next time.